All right, guys, good evening, and thanks for joining again today in my partnership series. I believe I'm loud and clear. Okay, here we go. I'm ready again for very interesting session today, and the more I get into this, the sweeter it becomes because I I engage both online and offline, and seeing new things, new perspectives, and all, and most especially the fact that I'm able to connect from the angle of our dynamics as a people, talking about Africans. So it's really a thing of privilege to always come back here and again to have this conversation. And thanks for allowing me to share from the wealth of my experience. Thank you so much. So today we will continue in our partnership series. Remember, the reason I'm doing this is, as said, I perceive strongly a wave of development across Africa. And I think strongly that one of those tools that would help us to harness the opportunity that is on the way in Africa is that ability for us to leverage our strengths as a people, our strengths when it comes to communal living, communal existence, and then bring that strength into the business space such that we begin to grow partnerships, healthy partnerships, which is really what this conversation is all about. So, thanks so much. And today, we are jumping into something interesting. This is hands on, as always. And today, I'm going to be sharing with you tools for evaluating partners and assessing compatibility for long term success. Again, the topic is tools for evaluating partners, um, potential partners in this context. So I'm not going to be sharing tools when the business is already on. Maybe I can just have a little bit of that, but today is really focused on before, not during the partnership, before the partnership. So tools that can help you to do an evaluation of potential partners and then do an assessment in terms of the compatibility of those potential partners, and then looking at it from the angle of would this really help us have a sustainable long-term success? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, let me start with a story. I recall years ago when I was going to be making my choice of who to marry and all of that. And there's this notion that you need to make sure that maybe you guys would have been 7 years in the relationship before you start thinking marriage. And I'm not here to say this is the right way to go or that is the right way to go. I'm just here to share my own personal experience here. So I recall that eventually I allowed myself to be influenced by a Bible story that I read about the story of the servant of Abraham, and how he was sent by his master to look for a wife, a suitable wife for his son. And then what the servant did on the journey was to position the seemingly irrelevant things of life, in terms of the camels, the animals, position them in a place, and then silently and patiently stood back to observe how people, how the females coming around, how they reacted or treated those seemingly relevant things. And so I picked my lesson from this, and I decided to take my time to begin to observe um, the person in this context that was going to be my wife. And then I started observing how was she taking those things that mattered so much to my life, to my existence, and how were they coming for her. For instance, one of the reasons I'm able to have this conversation with you is because there is somebody that will not tell me, Tayo, don't have that conversation. She would allow me to be me. She would allow me to do that which it resonates in my heart as an assignment that I have to do. So I saw all of this from time back, and it was the same reason that today, and I had to make that decision, which, yes, it had to also come from, I'm sure she did her testing and all of that. But the lesson I'm sharing is that before you get into that bigger level of relationship in business, you need to learn to collaborate on small projects. You need to learn to collaborate on the little things of life, and then that helps you to do assessment just before you tie yourself to a partnership on the bigger things of life, which is very crucial here. So, what this helps you to achieve is you are able to test compatibility. And from testing compatibility, it helps you to know who can go on the journey with you for the bigger things of life. I tell people something when it comes to relationships, the person that will break your heart has been breaking it from the very first day you met. It's just that you were not conscious enough to see through. Maybe you had self-styled what you saw, which supposedly supposed to be a weakness. You had self-styled it as a strength, and in self-styling it as a strength, you became blinded to those things that could eventually lead to the downfall in that relationship. And this thing is very practical. So let me give another example here. I know of someone, for instance, who was very, very domineering in a relationship, very, very domineering. And in that relationship, the other person thought that this was a strength. In essence, this person felt, oh, if I get into this relationship with this person will keep me accountable, this person is active, this person would inspire me to sit up, this person would help me to be focused. This was the way that domineering tendency was interpreted at that time. But remember something, last week, one of those things I emphasized on is the fact that weaknesses, we would not say there is something called weakness. Weakness really are strengths manifesting themselves from the other side. And then I use the example of a coin. The fact that if you flip a coin, there are two sides to it. The side you choose to be conscious of is what comes to you. So you would come across people in life that are demonstrating certain weaknesses, but you choose to be conscious of the fact that that weakness is a strength. The question is, are they conscious that they are demonstrating a weakness, or they are conscious of it as a strength? In essence, this same person that the other partner felt was going to keep him accountable, was going to inspire him by reason of that domineering nature. It was the same domineering nature that eventually led to the break, to the dissolution of that relationship. And so the question is, would that other party be saying the same thing from the same side of the coin that you are saying it? Or the other party is demonstrating those things without that consciousness of the fact that this is really a weakness. And you need to begin to rethink all of these things. What am I saying in essence? In relationship, you need to you need to assess you need to assess all of these things. You need to be really, really conscious. You need to, what the slang is, shine your eyes. You need to shine your eyes as much as possible. And this is not just about the choice of who goes with you as an active partner, as a director in that business, as a co-founder in that business. This also impacts on the choice of who goes with you as an investor in that business. So, for instance, I gave an example in one of my sessions how a very dynamic entrepreneur who was doing something fantastic had gotten financial support from an investor who definitely, perhaps because of the fact that, look, my money is already involved in this business, started demonstrating domineering tendencies and controlling that entrepreneur on what should and what should not be done in that business. The pricing, the market space, the sales, the investor just wanted to be involved in everything. And this began to shock this lady up, such that she had to have a crunch conversation with the investor for the investor to understand that, look, you invested in this business because you thought I was competent to run it. But now the investor was the one that was dictating what should and what should not be done in that business. So you begin to see tendencies and all of that. And this is why it's very essential for you, before you start that journey, to be able to do an assessment, an evaluation of potential partners, and an assessment of your compatibility for long-term success. And that's why we're having this conversation. So I will jump into those things I believe will be very practical, very handy for you to be able to know who to say yes to. And this has to do with whether the person is coming in as a co-founder or this person is coming in as an investor into that business. The number one thing, talking about assessing compatibility, the number one thing I would want to encourage you on is to have what I call scorecard. I'm going to repeat that. You need to have what I call scorecard. And your scorecard is a practical tool that can be used whether you are bringing in a co-founder or you are bringing in an investor, irrespective of the kind of investor, be it an angel investor, an institutional investor. This tool would help. It's going to work actively for any kind of relationship you are getting into. So let me get into what I mean by a scorecard. A scorecard in this context is a card where you have the list of things that matter, and then that helps you to then do a scoring based on what I am coming into, based on the tool that you are going to be leveraging, and based on your findings as well. And then this helps you to begin to analyze, can I say yes to this person? Is this person going to be suitable for the project that I am on? Or can I approach this person, depending on what the situation is? Remember something, one of those things that I had it thinking about just before I became married was the question, would I love for this woman to carry my child? And that's the language we use. Should this person be the mother of the seeds that will be coming to the head through me? And it's the same question you need to ask when it comes to business. You should really ask the question, having demonstrated or having done your assessment and all of that, you should begin to ask the question, would this person, or would you be happy that this person comes to shoulder the same burden of having this baby, which is the company that you are giving birth to? That aside, let me come back to what the scorecard is going to be all about and the content of the scorecard. The number one thing, now I'm going to be talking about the director scorecard. Remember, you can have the investor scorecard, you can have the director scorecard. When it comes to director scorecard, the number one thing you want to talk about is experience. Experience is a no-brainer. Experience should never be compromised on the altar of relationship. Look, that I have a loving wife does not make my wife the best partner on a business. It doesn't. They are two different things. If I would want somebody to be in a business by reason of relationship, let that person go to the back seat. There's a difference between the front seat where you need the brain, you need eyes, you need the experience to coordinate things, as against the back seat where you can sit down and then just have conversation. And many African entrepreneurs have not come to that understanding of how relevant this conversation is. And what am I saying in essence? You find many entrepreneurs still putting their family members in that business as a director. And in my book, Structure Secrets for Startups, this was one of those things I addressed. And I gave a very practical instance. Imagine you going from a place and wanting to go to another place, and you are going to be using the flight, or you're going to be using the aeroplane. And then you got into that plane and you were told, you got an announcement that, welcome on board. The person that is going to be taking you on this journey has never driven a plane before, does not have any experience, does not even know how to do it, has never even entered a plane before. And then the question I would ask you is, would you even sit the next second in that aeroplane? I think you would want to jump outside of it and even forfeit your ticket. And then you can leave the conversation about getting a refund for next time, or even doing some petition. And this is the way it is. When you put people in that business without the scorecard of experience, just on the platform of relationship, you are missing something already. And what happens at the end is you are likely to jump into a business that can crash land. And many of us, or many entrepreneurs within African space, are making the same mistake, and that's something you should not make. So you need to prioritize experience. Have that as the number one thing on your scorecard. And in your experience, you're talking about what are the skill sets, or what skills will this person be bringing on board. And then you should also then consider the traits that this person has. So traits will come from personality and all of that. The next thing is you need to also consider what I call track record. When I get into tools, all of these things will make more sense. You need to find a way to identify or do an assessment of the track record of the person that you are considering as a prospect, as a potential partner in that business. You need to also look at compatibility, of course. And broadly speaking, we're talking about compatibility. But the question is, how much of you does this person complement? How much of you does this person complement in terms of vision, in terms of goals, in terms of leadership style, in terms of communication? Remember again, if you take the opposite sides of two magnets and you try to make them to attract, you can only continue to have a friction that will never come to being. They will never come to play together. It will be a force and a struggle. And this is what many partnerships have been all about. And the problem, really, the challenge is compatibility assessment was not done from the very beginning. Or better still, they rushed into that relationship before they started trying to figure things out. Some partnerships will work, but most partnerships would not work because the scorecard was not brought into play before that relationship was established. And this is something that is very crucial. I'll tell you something. I had a very brief engagement before jumping into marriage. Mine is an exemption, but I'll tell you something. Many relationships failed because there was that rush, and you don't need to make that rush. You do not need to compromise the fact that you have to take things as slowly as possible. And this is one of those things I'm going to come to. Remember my postulation in all of these things. The summary of everything I've discussed so far is that partnership should be a graduating thing. Partnership, you don't arrive at it overnight. You start from the elementary things of life. It's just like a relationship. You start from friendship, you move into dating, you go into courtship, and then you can get into marriage. I think that should be brought into the context of partnership in businesses. You need to move from the basic things of life, basic projects, one-off projects, to synergies and all of that before you then say that you are complementing yourself. So this is a complement journey. This is how you know over time, does this person complement the value, the culture, the norms that I have as a person, or there's going to be some friction at the end of it. Now, don't get me wrong. In the same way that you will not find perfection in marriages, you will not find perfection in relationships. And I've addressed this in one of our series where I talked about managing relationships and all of those things. So you need to still go back and check some of these things that I've discussed earlier on. Very crucial, and I'm sure that they would really, really help you in your journey to having that better synergy, or the best synergy that you can have to give birth to that business that is on your mind. Now, the next thing you need to look at is what I call reputation. Let me tell you something. You should never think that your project is going to change people. I'll repeat that. Don't ever think that your project is going to change people. And project I mean here is that business. The same thing is applicable in relationships. You'll find people that have already come to understand the tendencies and the friends that they have, and then they want to graduate that friendship into a deeper relationship. And at that point, what it's on their mind is, look, when we get into that deeper relationship, this person would have no choice than to change. No, you do not change people. And it's why I said earlier on, the one that will break your heart has broken it from the very first day. It's just that you colored it another way around by giving an excuse that, look, this is it, and you did not call it what it was. There is really nothing that you are going to find on the journey in a relationship that you did not find early enough in that relationship. If you take your time to do an assessment, you begin to see that, well, this person actually demonstrated these tendencies and all of that, and you actually said yes to it. You consented to it by virtue of how you approach things and all of that. And then you should be able to then, live according to what you had consented to from the very beginning. So you should understand that, reputation is very essential. You need to add it to your scorecard. And just as I said earlier on, one of those things you are going to be asking is, look, in terms of saying that I'm in relationship with this person, is it worth it to say that this person, myself and this person, we co-founded this idea, we co-founded this business, or we worked in synergy as colleagues, as co-founders on this project? Reputation is a very crucial thing. Do not take it for granted. And it's something that you need and really, really need to take good care of in the conversation around who you say yes to. And I will still have, just touch on certain points when it comes to reputation, from the global perspective, or maybe I just get into that right on the spot. Now, when you're thinking business, especially in Europe, one of those things that would happen usually, especially when you have come together as partners, and then you are trying to get into the public space. Let's say maybe you wanted some funds from a financial institution, or you are going to be bidding for projects from the government. When these entities are to do their background check, one of those things they are going to be checking is the reputation of every partner in that structure. So imagine if one of your partners is a politically exposed person, and this partner has brought in funds into the business. You know what that could look like for your business, especially if for wrong reasons this partner has been tagged across the media and even found guilty of some of these things, maybe in the court of law. So it's just an example, and we need to begin to understand how this whole thing works, such that in our space within Africa, we can begin to put the right structures in place to ensure that the people that we are coming in relationship with, they are people of great reputation. You can beat your chest and say, this is my partner, and yes, this is my partner. And all of these things, they come to vision again. Remember, I gave the example of the Beatles. I think that was last week and earlier on. The thing that really led to the death of that brand was the fact that there was just some level of differences at the end of the day in the value and the thought system of the partners. Some wanted political, became politically outspoken. Some just wanted to do music for entertainment. And this eventually led to the dissolution of that synergy because there was clearly a difference in the pathway. So if you do an assessment of what is being brought up and you see that in the long term, this person that is being brought in might be the reason for the downfall of that project, it's important for you to begin to have a comma and rethink everything. And this is very practical. So, for instance, starting a business, you can look at it and say, well, now, I'm not against politics. Get me right here. It just happened that this is the example I can use at this point. So, for instance, you were going to start a project and you needed a publicity, and you saw that there was this person that has that awareness, that followership in the political sector. You know that your business has nothing to do with politics, but you brought this person in by virtue of the same thing, the same strength, what you conceive to be a strength. You brought this person in, and in the long term, certain things started creeping in, and then there were issues around public fund, which are normal. These are things we see every time within the African space. So you started seeing indictments here and there, and then all of these things started rubbing on the reputation of the business. And then you started asking yourself, why didn't you think of this whole thing when you started? The point is, you thought of those things, but you did not think in the bigger or the broader context. You thought of it from the excuse of this person he brought in is going to create door, is going to open door to you and all of that. So it's why I said earlier on that there is no breaking of heart that didn't happen from the very beginning. You had an hint of it, but you chose to interpret it another way around, and you weren't getting the bigger context of what you were getting yourself into. So you need to have a very broad context, a very broad understanding of every relationship that you get into. So you see why reputation is one of those things you cannot but take highly serious in your scorecard. And the next point I'm going to be talking about is the fact that you need to ensure that whoever you are bringing on board on your scorecard, there has to be something about the corporate culture. What is the culture you have seen about the project? What's the culture that connects or aligns with the vision which is being brought into that business? If there is a culture, you need to make sure that the prospective partner also has that tendency to suit into that culture that you are bringing in. And if in your case you are looking at a relationship from the investor side of things, that means you're not looking for a co-founder that is bringing technical competence into the conversation. Rather, you are looking for investors, people that will finance the business or the project. You need to also do an assessment of financial background. I gave you an example earlier on. Imagine you are getting into a business. Yes, you need a fund, and then the person you are dealing with is somebody that is politically exposed. And then the same, oh, this person is going to be this, is going to be that. And at the end of the day, you got all the fund, but then things kept, let's say, I do not want to mention any name now, but let's say that an agency, a security outfit comes calling, and then they started doing digging and doing research, doing findings, even though you know that this person did not put in some money from government into the business. The point is, at that time, this business becomes flagged as one of those, brands that needs to be checked, and it becomes a distraction to what you are building. So I'm not shocked. I understand better when certain investors will tell you that, look, certain entrepreneurs will tell you that, look, I just want to be a core entrepreneur. I do not want to involve myself or have around me people that have some political exposure somewhere. I understand the context, right? But I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm not saying we do not have clean hands. And I'm not campaigning that, this is the wrong way to go. I am just, again, using this as an example. There are many examples you can think of. It could be, around culture, on what you think about different things. It could even be sexuality conversation. I mean, what school of opinion, what school of thoughts do you belong to? Do you belong to the liberal conversation around sexuality? Do you belong to another class? So a lot of things, and these are things you need to do an assessment of. So if you are bringing an investor in, understand what's the financial background of this investor, what's their track record. It has to be on your scorecard. If there is no track record, which is, it can happen, right? You can be dealing with an angel investor that's really, oh, time has gone. Oh my. I hope that I'm making some sense here. All right, thank you so much. I can see some comments here. Thank you, mommy. Thank you for joining today's conversation. I'll just try to rush this thing because 30 minutes is ideal time I try to spend on this. So you may want to check and be sure that there is a track record, and if it's an angel investor that doesn't have any history of investing or stuff, you may want to check compatibility. I've talked about compatibility earlier. You can check that point I made on compatibility. Then it's important for you to check financial stability. It's important for you to also check the reputation of that investor. These are things that also connect from things I've said earlier on. If the scorecard is for a co-founder, so these are things you may want to check as well. And then jumping into tools. I'm thinking I would have a part two of this conversation next week. I just want to make sure that, or better still, let's quickly wrap it up. I will try to continue. I can see that everybody seems to be having fun on this, so I'll just continue so that I don't have a break in conversation. So, coming to tools you can use when on this subject matter we are discussing today. Now we have done the scorecard. The scorecard itself would need certain tools you can use to be able to then come to conclusion on that scorecard. So the tools I'm talking about is in the context of things that would aid you to be able to make use of the scorecard and then come to a conclusion that indeed this is my decision on this matter. Number one, tool, you should check professional networks. In the context of what we have today, we'll be talking about LinkedIn. You should check professional networks. Yeah, there are people that will not be anywhere. They live quiet life, and you can't take that from them. But it would mean that you are more likely to be exposed unnecessarily. So you should check political and you should check professional networks. Pardon me. So you should check media. Is there any news out there about this person? I mean, these are things that would help you when you are having a one-on-one to be able to know what to ask, to be able to know what to look out for, and they will guide you on the tendencies you need to look out for as well. So check social platforms, check professional networks. There are platforms for angel investors. There are platforms for institutional investors. You need to check people that have gone through them before, and the tool you can use is that professional network is very essential. And questions you're asking: what are they known for? What do they do there? What is their reputation? You need to check all of these things, and it's very crucial. Another tool you can use is the company's registry, depending on your country. So in Nigeria, for instance, we have Corporate Affairs Commission. Your country, please also drop the entity in charge of companies and company registration. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you do not check, right, it's important because it helps you to know where their commitment lies. Imagine an investor or somebody that is to come into that business as a co-founder who is already on the board of another business that is competing with your business. It's just going to look like somebody that is seeking to have a marriage with you, yet an existing marriage with someone else. That is deception of the highest order. And many entrepreneurs will be able to guard themselves from such deception if they do what I call due diligence. If they take their time to really research on those people or that person or that institution that is coming on board. And that's why I call it a tool. You need to check the company's registry. I think in the United Kingdom, it's called Companies House. So you need to know which entity is in charge of companies and then investigate those people. Which companies are they currently directors on? Which companies are they currently shareholders in? You need to investigate all of these things to make sure that you do not commit yourself to somebody that has a competing interest or a conflicting relationship that may lead to the destruction of that baby, that business you are putting together. And depending on what country you are, you should also check what I call, do a credit check. Check their credit background. Many countries have grown to this stage. South Africa, one of them, you need to invest in doing a soft check or a hard check, whichever one is relevant in your country. Do a check to know their credit background. Part of that credit background will tell you as well if, from the look of things, these people are credit worthy. Are they people you can deal with? Look, recently I was privileged to have a conversation with one of my partners, and we were just looking at the situation of somebody that came our way. We found that this person, could have helped himself, but for the fact that he got into a relationship, had his name in that business, moved on, signed out, thought that was all, but didn't follow up to be sure that he was indeed signed out of that business. When he started his own thing and then trouble came for that old business, that trouble also came searching for him because he had committed his name to that old business. And what am I talking about in essence? It's very important for you, whichever side of the coin you fall, it's very important for you to make sure that you are doing your findings to be sure that you do not find yourself in a conflicting situation that can land you in a mess you could have avoided if you've taken your time to do the right investigation that would guide yourself. Thank you so much. I'm just quite conscious that time is fast spent. My name is Eitayo Oguyemi, and I hope you had a lovely time with me today. I'll be coming again your way next week, Sunday precisely, and I would want you to look forward to it. Please remember, share this video. If you loved it, make your comment as well. I would love to hear your feedback, and thanks once again. Do have for yourself a wonderful, wonderful week ahead.